mouth and meditations of all our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. You ever had anybody ask you something and you're like, why are you asking me to do that? One of the things that for me, that I know that people are goofing around when they do it, but people always say, can't you do something about the weather? Don't you have a connection to the guy upstairs that controls this? And my answer to it is always, if you think that I could pray and control the weather, don't you think I would? Because if I did, and it changed, this place would be full. Our son said, that man's got some power. Of course, the reality is, I have no control over the weather. And the other thing, of course, could you tell me the winning lottery numbers? Is that if I could do that, do you think I would tell you? Of course, today we have Jesus being asked something out of the blue, crowd gathered, and there's one person with a strange request. Can you do something about my brothers and sisters, perhaps, probably more brothers, who don't seem to want to share the family inheritance with me? And first I'm like, why in the world would somebody think Jesus could do anything about that? And it could be, well, A, maybe rabbis in his time, they certainly were called upon to make medical decisions, to decide whether something is clean or unclean. Perhaps they're supposed to also be the arbitrators of wills. Don't know that for sure, but that seems to make some sense. Of course, it could also be that he cast out some unclean demons. Maybe he can do something about these bonehead brothers of mine. Whatever it is, Jesus says to him, this is not my problem. There is nothing I can do about it. But he turns it into, what do we call it these days? Teachable moments. And of course, the main lesson being about greed. Paul says greed being idolatry. And he brings out a wonderful parable about a rich man who has already been blessed pretty well. He didn't say a farmer had enough. He said a rich man. That's key. This person already has all that they could possibly need, and probably even a little bit more. And somehow manages to get blessed even more. The American dream, who knows? But the man in that moment, instead of saying, you know, I already have enough, I actually have more than enough, why don't I perhaps distribute some of this extra blessing I've got? Why don't I see if there are some people in need in my immediate vicinity who could benefit from this extra food? My guess is there probably were a few. But instead, I got a better idea. I'm going to build a bigger garden. I'm going to hoard and store, and it's all going to be about me. Everybody will say, look at how much that guy has. As if they probably weren't already doing that. And then the beauty of it, and at night, a vision where it comes and says, you fool. There's nobody going to celebrate how big your barns are once you're gone. They might have celebrated how generous you were with what God had blessed you with. That might have been an interesting legacy to have. And of course, he also had that beautiful phrase, eat, drink, and be merry, and we would say, for tomorrow you die. Tomorrow you die. Jesus didn't mean it that well, as we sometimes do. And I'm not saying you shouldn't eat, drink, and enjoy life. But I am saying that for those of us who've been blessed with either enough or even a little more than enough, we need to be that generous and compassionate. Not stuck on, look at me, look how much I have. The other aspect of it is, of course, somewhere in the prayer book, there's a lovely little rubric that says that from time to time, the clergy are supposed to remind their folks to make sure that their earthly possessions are disposed of properly when their time comes. I guess telling you, go find a lawyer, make a will. I'm sure there's another part in it that's supposed to hint at what your will ought to say, but I'm going to take Jesus' line, who made me in charge of your will? But the aspect, again, comes down to with what you have. Are you happy with the way you are using it? Do the places that you give of your time, your talent, and your treasure reflect your values? Do they say something about who you are as a person of faith? If they don't, you might want to revisit it. You might want to ask yourself that question. Am I being that image of God that I want to be? Or am I being a little too idolatrous with what I have? Sometimes you might think, well, on my earthly pilgrims, I barely am making it. And that may be true. But in the end, you can't take it with you. Heaven's got everything you need, as far as I believe. So what will you do at the end? Do you want to hear a voice saying, "You fool"? Or do you want to hear a voice saying, "Well done, good and faithful servant"? Bigger barns are nice, I guess. But having what I need, going back to last week, my daily bread, if I have enough of that, the rest is gravy and free for me to do what I would choose to do with it. And hopefully, something that says positive things about me and the legacy I might leave. Most of us want to be known, I think, for being generous, being compassionate, and revealing the image of God to others. But it is through our actions, through our attitudes towards almost everything that happens. And perhaps one of the places where our attitude often needs some polishing is towards our finances. The money that we have, what we do with it. When we look and see opportunities to give freely, do we take them? I hope so. And I can say, in general, my experience here has been, the answer to that is yes. But in those times, when perhaps when you're playing around and you see that Powerball's up to 200 million now, or 400, ask yourself, if I won that, what would I do? I did it with the 70 million once, and I couldn't come up with 70 million ways to give money away. I still had 13 million left. Some people would have benefited really well. But it's again that question. I know God has already blessed me with what I need. And sometimes I can find I have a little bit more than I need. In those times, though, when I really get blessed even more abundantly than I could have asked or imagined, do I look only towards myself, or do I look towards other places that are important to me and that do mission and ministry to help God's hurting world in ways that make sense and reveal my faith? Amen.